Hello, everyone. This is the MiDiGo webinar April 2023. So we today hosting Javier Aragal. Welcome to our webinar, Aragal. I would like to introduce him at first. He graduated in political science at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and he has written extensively on the external dimension of migration policies and migration development link. And is also a frequent contributor to various media outlets and providing analysis on migration dynamics in the European and especially Mediterranean region. And also he has been the coordinator of migration programs in the IMED and a member of scientific team of the Euromed survey. And also he is at present Euromesco Migration and Survey Officer, responsible for coordinating fieldwork, questionnaire design, and quantitative analysis of results. Thank you, Javier. Actually, we are very happy to meet with you. And today you will present, I think, migration in the European Mediterranean region. Okay, this is yours, your voice.
Yeah. Okay, good morning. Thank you for to offer this opportunity to do this presentation. I will talk about three main elements that are important to understand a little bit migrations in the region. And when I say the region, it's the Euro-Mediterranean region. First of all, we'll have a look to migration dynamics. Then to have a look to different issues that are very important now in the policy agenda now and in the future as well, and then a little bit on migration policies, especially those that the European Union is in designing at the regional level. Okay, the first thing I would like to show this map, because this map, it's like showing a little bit the three main corridors of migration from the southern shore to Europe. And we can see here the land routes, the sea routes, and the main places of embarkment and disembarkment. But this map is from 2005. That means that like 18 years ago, there were already these migration flows, these migration dynamics in the Mediterranean. And if we update that with the map that the International Organization for Migration it's like publishing every year, here we can see that more or less nothing has changed. Here we have more detail on data of the people that is crossing the sea, the places from where the people is embarking to do this journey towards Europe, and the places where the the people is arriving or disembark places. And we can see here then that the whole region is still having a very important dynamic of migration flows from north to south. But this is a picture of last year. I think that the best thing is to see a little bit the evolution, because in the end, as we can see here, this is a graph that shows us this element in 2015, that here we are not talking about migration as such. We are here talking about a humanitarian emergency that was caused by the war in Syria at that moment. But if we take out this 2015, during all these years, more than a decade, the numbers of every year's people arriving from north to south, from south to north, sorry, it's more or less a similar number, no more than 200,000 people. And we can see here the annual change, and here we can see that all these years, from 2014 to 2016, it was related to this humanitarian situation related to asylum seekers and refugees from the war in Syria, not these migration dynamics that we normally have in the Mediterranean. This is very important because, as we will see later, we have some changes in the policy agenda related to these numbers from 2015, and they are treated like if they were like migration flows, but they were not migration flows. In any case, what is important, we can see now the evolution in the last years, taking out the numbers of 2015 because they alter everything. But in the end, in the last years, we can see an evolution that it's irregular. We have less and less number of people crossing the Mediterranean, especially in 2020, of course, due to the COVID-19. And then there's the numbers go up again. And data from this first months of 2023, there's a number of people crossing, but it's not a huge number. It's a regular number for the first quarter of the year. What is important as well is this line here, because this line shows us the percentage of people that is considered as missing during the journey. That means that they probably die during the cross in a shipwreck, for instance, or we don't have data on these people. And of course, we are quite aware that maybe they are not all, and this is one of the tragedies of this. We have a very important humanitarian component here. People is dying. It's an important percentage because 1% of 100,000, it's like 1,000 people. And especially here, during the COVID times, we have this peak here. That means that the crossing of the Mediterranean is more and more dangerous, and people maybe it's trying to cross it in more desperate ways. This is very important for us to keep that, and we should have this percentage very low, or even try to make it zero. Then we can have a look to the different corridors. As we saw in the map, we have these three main corridors: west, central, and east. West is the border in Spain. We have the Gibraltar Strait, and we have also the people. It's not Mediterranean 100% because we have this Atlantic part of Morocco that goes to the Canary Islands. But in any case, the figures in this western corridor compared to the others, it's quite low. And we have here the was from this Atlantic corridor. It's not the western as such 100%. But again, here in these years, we had this this number of people that were dying crossing the Mediterranean or missing. It was important. That means that it became more insecure in these years, and now figures seems to have changed a little bit. In any case, it is important to know that this Western corridor, if we try to think about the agenda here, it's especially to take into account that negotiation between Morocco and Spain are very important. Because migration there is a like a political asset in negotiations, and here we can see that especially this year and last year as well, it has an effect because they are now both governments have a sort of agreement on controlling that. In the Eastern corridor, it will be more the part of Greece, and we can see here in 2016 still had the impact of this humanitarian situation with refugees from Syria, especially. And then what is interesting to see is that the percentage of missing people it's lower, and it is probably because the geographical element, because islands of Greece, some islands are in front of the Greek coast, and it's not so danger, not so long journey, and maybe there we have an explanation of this lower percentage of people that is missing. And as we can see, it's quite irregular with some ups and downs, but it is still a number that it's constant, and sometimes it can happen that it goes up suddenly, and there's still an important component of mixed flow of refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants. And here again, as we had in the Western corridor, these negotiations between Spain and Morocco, here is the most important element. It was the agreement that the European Union established with Turkey, the Turkish government, this action plan to control and to manage the migration flows or asylum seekers flow back in 2016. The Central Corridor, which is now the most active and more in the policy agenda and the newspaper. As we can see, it's quite irregular. Even in the humanitarian crisis back in 2016 and 17, it had an impact in the Central Corridor. That means that people were crossing in a land route towards some disembarkment places in Libya, for instance, and Tunisia, and then trying to cross to mainly to Italy and this Italian island in the midway, that is Lampedusa, and then also Malta. Here again, it's very important to see that in the years in the year 19, and then in the COVID times, there was an important decrease of people crossing, but the number of people that were missing was reaching a peak, and this is really an important element. That means that again the organization of these journeys was really maybe organized with no guarantees, and it was very dangerous. And maybe probably the sea rescue operations were not as important as in other years, for instance, like here. Sorry. It is important to see that these 4 months of 2023, they have an important number of people arriving, that even it's similar to the numbers that we have during the whole 2022 in the central, in the western and eastern corridor. That means that today the main corridor, the most active and the most difficult to understand and to manage, it's the central one. Here, the main elements are Libya and Tunisia, and then this specific element to have of having these two islands, Lampedusa and Malta, in the midway, and then we have the Italian government, and these are the main actors here in play. Of course, all the time we have the European Union as well, but the situation in Libya, the situation in Tunisia of a economic and political crisis allows that these embankment points are growing, and this flow of people trying to reach Europe is keeping important numbers. This is a general vision of the last years, just to see that it changes from year to year. The corridor that is the most important during a year. Here we have in 2017 that the central corridor was the most important, or the most with higher numbers. But then the following years we have this crisis in Spain with the Canary Island and some different corridor. Sorry. And then it changes from year to year. It's not like we don't have a really uh, regular pattern in the Mediterranean. In the last 2 years, of course, the Central Corridor is the most important one. And very quick, we can see the main nationalities that are reported to arrive during these years, and it has it keeps some logic, not 100%, but sometimes when the central corridor is the most important during that year, nationalities from sub-Saharan countries are the most common. All the times we have the Syrians there because it keeps a flow of people trying to reach Europe, escaping from the war and the situation that is now in Syria. Then in the year 2018, as you can see, we can see that the Western corridor was most important, and we can see that nationalities are from the north of Africa or other sub-Saharan countries. Again, Syrians are there, and also Afghanistan. It's some of the nationalities that is always there. And it is very important because these flows, Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, are not the same flows as sorry, as the sub-Saharan ones, because here we still have an ongoing war or a very unstable situation with political risk, as well as in Afghanistan with the Taliban rule at this moment. Again, here, when when we have the Eastern corridor as the most important, then we have the most common nationalities are from Eastern countries, as we can see here. In 2020, we can see that it's very irregular and it doesn't have a very common pattern. Here is North African countries, the most important nationalities crossing the Mediterranean, and that's the Western corridor is most important. And then in 21, again, is the central, but here the component from Moroccans, and so that means North African countries are very important. Here, data that is provided doesn't explain us the difference first years. Data shows us an important from Egypt. That means that every year we have changes, and here it's very important to go to each one of the countries and trying to understand why this flow is activating or why these people is trying to reach Europe. And again, we can see that here appears Egypt for the first time, and here we have a mixture of North African countries, but also sub-Saharan, but also this constant flow of people from countries like Syria, Afghanistan. And also you have seen that in many years it appears also Bangladesh. That means that in the Mediterranean we have people crossing the Mediterranean after having made a land journey very long, crossing many countries and unstable countries with many dangers. And probably there's a structured and an organized way to bring people from Bangladesh to the Mediterranean. This is a very important figures, I think, when we try to think on the policy agenda that we will talk about later. But what is important here? This is the number of asylum and first-time asylum applicants to the European Union. In the year 2022, here we don't have here people from Ukraine, so it's only asylum demands arriving to the European Union, mostly from these nationalities that we have seen in the three main corridors. There is, of course, a number from asylum applicants from South America, but the most important, more than 80% of these applicants come from people from countries from the south of the Mediterranean. And this is a very important element because this is the percentage of this application that rejected. That means that, for instance, last year, if we have a 40%, almost 40% of rejections of these demands, that means that almost 300,000 people stay in the European Union with undocumented because they don't have any permit, they don't have any recognition, they don't have any paper to sustain that they are regularly staying in the European Union. That means that every year we have a number of people that are not allowed to obtain this application as asylum seeker, and the accumulated number is very important. We have more than 1 million people that is in this situation, and this is very important to understand the political narratives on migration in the European Union. Although they are asylum seekers and applicants, the accumulated number of people that are not allowed to be asylum seeker, it's growing, and it's people that stay there. And then you need an extra effort to regularize the situation. And this is an important number, and it's very easy for populist parties to make a narrative against this irregular situation of more than 1 million people, 1.5 million people in the Mediterranean. It is in Europe, coming from or crossing from the, mostly crossing from the Mediterranean. This is a map specifically focused on the African, sub-Saharan African routes that go up to the Mediterranean, just to show another a very important component is the humanitarian one. There are according to UNHCR, these routes are very long and very extended. They cross many borders of countries that have a weak state or they have unstable situations, and bring a long journey with abuses on them if they are, maybe they are used for for smugglers for working, for instance. In the case of women, they are abused and obliged to be active in the sex business, for instance. And it is very important because when we see the people that is trying to cross and arriving to European coast, they have before a very long story and accumulated a number of abuses and dangers and suffering, and psychologically it affects. Probably I don't have the maps, the same kind of map we can have for people from Bangladesh and Afghanistan arriving to the Mediterranean coast, probably with the same similar maps, for instance. And again, it is very important because this human component here, it's very important, and I think it's something that when we talk about that in a political level with a policy agenda, it's something that sometimes seems to be forgotten. If we go to the policy agenda, what I would like to present here is the main issues that are now in different papers, in different seminars, and in different academics that they are talking about that. And then we will compare that with some prospects of how migration will be in the next years. Very quickly, the element of overlapping flows, it is something that it was not directly mentioned, but indirectly, that we have now these flows crossing the Mediterranean, these flows moving across the Mediterranean. Uh, they overlap, or they are mixed flows of asylum seekers, economic migrants, and for instance, we can maybe start to talk about some migrants, not climatic migrants, but that migrants that the first reason to start a migration journey, it was because of the first or the effects of the climate change. So here it's a mixed flow of people and mixed flow of in the end of reasons and causes of moving. And we cannot only talk about migration flows, we have to talk of human movements in the region because there's a mix of elements here. The post-COVID scenario, it seems like long ago, the COVID-19, but still the effects still there, especially because it affected labor markets, both in sending and receiving countries, and it makes more difficult to find a job with the economy. Maybe here we have to add post-COVID and ongoing conflicts like the Ukrainian war, that it causes a major economic problems, and also for mobility, because during the COVID, there was this borders were closed, movements were like very reduced, and some of these dynamics of closing and security borders as may be still there. Another element is border management. Uh, it's very common to hear about securitization strategies, even to externalize control policies to other third countries. That means that as a receiving country externalize some of the controls of the border to sending countries. Then we have, sorry, all the strategies on smuggling and trafficking of human beings, especially in, as we saw, there are these huge land routes before arriving to the Mediterranean coast, and then even once in the Mediterranean coast, there is an organization that allows or that people crossing, and here again there's a huge debate on how to counter smuggling. What is the importance of this of smuggling in the different regions and countries, and how is the best way to confront that. And then two other elements that are more related to not to the the human movements as such, but once an effect of the movements. One is the perceptions on migration. This is valid both for receiving countries, but also for transit countries in the Mediterranean. Most of North African countries are sending, but also transit countries. And the narrative of migration is very important. We can see that we saw that in the European Union there's a very negative narrative on some political parties on migration. Even in North Africa, for instance, the Tunisian government was in the last weeks reproducing a very negative narrative on migration. And finally, the importance of national policies, because in the end, countries have elections every 4 years, and the voters decide in the end the governments, and sometimes, as in the case of the European Union, uh, mm, states are more and more developing or voters are developing an opinion that is quite against migration, as we can see these political parties that are growing in South Europe, in Central Europe, and in Northern Europe. So here I took these future scenarios from an academic uh, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and he was like presenting some future scenarios. For me, it is very interesting, but because all these elements that these future scenarios, like going back to control, strictly control external borders, the increase of flows related to instability in the neighborhood, like conflicts, or here again, here it's the climate change is expressed in terms of extreme weather, or then on a scenario of there's still an open door for migration in the European Union, but with a selective admission. That means that it will be very difficult to obtain permits, and very focused on skilled migrants, and then a restrictive policy on migration related to this growing discourse of the more control of external borders linked to these issues that we were talking about, these mixed flows, or this the border management, the instability in the neighborhood, and the neighbors of the neighbors, probably. Then it has a direct relation with these mixed flows, because with stability we have a mixed flow of refugees, asylum seekers, and economic migrants. It has an incidence on border management, and of course it has an impact on smuggling. Here, with more selective admission, that means, yes, keeping an open door to migration, but with with controls and more strict permits and conditions to enter. It's directly related to border control, to border management, but also to national policies, because now it's more and more common to hear that the EU governments and even the European Commission, that there's a need of of people to of migrants to cover some specific jobs that are not uh, occupied by the European population, because population is decreasing, and there's a need of constant arrival of people for these economic reasons. And then this selective admission, it's like a proposal to say we allow migration, but very controlled and with strict measures. And finally, this going native scenario, it's more related to this negative perception of and narratives on migration, and the importance of the internal politics and policies in each one of the receiving countries. If we look at trends that from the European Commission think tank were elaborated more than 5 years ago, these trends, some of these trends, I think they are not all of them, but I just took the most important one because I think that they are still valid for this analysis. We have this increase of forced displacement that it's quite linked to this instability in the region, because it's related to armed conflicts or human rights violation and persecution. Then we have the component of climate change, and here this is more and more important because it reshapes the region of the world where the people can still have a normal life or not, and this is changing, and the evolution, it's really faster than it was planned or it was thought. Then there was another trend very important that it was detected that migration is really becoming a business, and that it is related to smuggling. It is a business because sometimes it has the same profits or similar profits as weapon trafficking, for instance, or trafficking of other of of other and then attitudes towards migration matters. That means that again, this national agenda, these perceptions are very important. Very quickly, we can make this relation with these trends, with these issues that are important. Uh, Here, for instance, it's very interesting because climate change, we don't still have the recognition of climate refugees still. So people that is moving and migrating from their home related to climate change or to changes in the weather. uh, what are they? They are migrants. They are refugees because they cannot, probably they cannot go back to their home regions because the the it's the economy that
I think his internet connection is down, but I think that was the last words. Thank you for this webinar and for appreciated this big contribution to our webinar series. Thank you.